alignment, manifestation, synchronicity, dark night of the soul. What does it all mean? Is the woo sometimes a little too woo for you? Join me as I break it all down on Decoding the Woo Woo with Dana Sardano. Hi, my name is Dana Sardano, and this is Decoding the Woo Woo. Welcome, and thank you for joining me. Decoding the Woo Woo is a show that I created because I wanted to demystify a lot of the misconceptions of spirituality. I wanted to break down some of the heady and esoteric concepts that feel like they're like out of reach for us and make it attainable for all of us. Because as you know, at the end of the day, whether it appears that way or not, we are all spiritual beings, and we are coming to a place in Earth's elevation that more and more of us are discovering that about ourselves. And if I'm being honest, I've made it my mission to assist others in their journey of self-discovery, because I know that it could be daunting. It could even be scary. And especially if you don't have the people around you that understand what you're going through. And we are here with Decoding the Woo Woo, with the hope of assisting you in this process. Now, if you are right out of the gate, peeking around the corner, just opening your eyes to all of this, or if you have been on this roller coaster for as long as you can remember, with all the dips and all the turns and the chin spittle and the white knuckling it, regardless of where you are on this journey, there's always something to glean. And I'm hoping again that we do this together. So once again, thank you for joining me, and let's begin. So before I get into the woo, I just wanted to share a little bit about myself with you, a little bit of my backstory, my why, if you will. I'm a retired educator. I had been in traditional education for 20 plus years. And in 2015, I had picked up a paintbrush. I always joke, by happenstance. But one Friday evening, I was newly married. I had two small children, not necessarily in that order, but don't judge me. But we had a babysitter. And one Friday evening, I asked my husband if we could do something a little bit different. I wanted to go to one of those, those painting with a twist classes, where you paint like an elephant or a turtle or a palm tree or something, hang out with a bunch of people and drink wine. So I asked him if he would go do something like that with me. And he was like, no, I'm not going to hang out with a bunch of women, drink wine, paint pictures. He's like, but what I will do is I will take you to Michael's. I'll buy you anything you want, and we'll paint at home. I was like, awesome. So we did that. We went to Michael's, picked out a bunch of stuff. We didn't know what the hell we were doing. And we went home and we painted. And that night changed the trajectory of my life in ways that I couldn't even imagine. So I painted him this elephant, and he was like, oh my God, I think you're good. And I was like, listen, I'm not going to win any awards for this. But what happened was something within me had awoken that had lain dormant for decades. That little girl in me that wanted to be an artist when I grew up, that dream that wasn't nurtured, and she got like locked in a box somewhere. She came out, and I had to paint after that. So that night, painted my Robbie an elephant, and then every day after that, I had to paint. So I would go to work, do my thing, go to work, come home, be a mommy, make dinner, put the kids to bed, and I would put a sheet over the table and I would paint. And this went on and on and on. I had paintings all over my office at work. People were requesting paintings, and it just continued to expand until somebody commissioned me to do a painting. I was like, I can get paid for this. So then that turned into art festivals, which turned into exhibitions, which turned into me just feverishly wanting to do anything I could to be an artist. But while doing so, feeling the dissonance with my old life, feeling the dissonance with old friends, feeling the dissonance with my old job, till finally, at some point, I had to make a choice. You love to do this. You're expanding with this. Do you want to continue to do this? Or do you want to remain attached to your old career, your old identity, your old income? And I made a choice. And in 2017, I left my job as a traditional educator, and I pursued life as an artist. Now, I tell the story in this neat little bow and make it sound so easy, but really it required some sacrifice. When I told my husband I wanted to leave my job, we were both doing relatively well, and we lived the lifestyle of that. He's like, listen, you want to do this, I'll support you, but you have to give up that fancy, that fancy car, the look, I made it in my job car. This house, this beautiful house that we just renovated by the beach to live in a more, a house that we could afford out, in a rural area. And if you want to do that, let's do it. So gave him the keys to the Mercedes. We put the house on the market. We moved out to a rural area, and I began my life as an artist. So that was 2017. What I didn't realize moving out into this rural area is when I returned to the joy of doing something that I loved, and I invested in myself and I committed to myself, regardless of the fear attached to it, regardless of the naysayers, I truly expanded a part of myself that I didn't even realize was there. When I returned to nature, we moved out to this rural area, and I lived a simpler lifestyle. I returned to self. And all of a sudden, I found myself on this unintentional spiritual journey, this beautiful journey where I had these new experiences that were in alignment with this new version of myself. I met these new people that were in alignment with this new person that I was. And my life started to get really interesting. And then that woo-woo aspect of my life started to open up. My natural inclinations, my natural gifts that I kind of took for granted began to expand into something more. I mean, I know I sound trite when I say this, but something more magical. And this continued. And the more I nurtured it and the more I embraced it, the more it expanded. And I continued this artist life, and it turned into 2015. I started painting. 2017, I left my job. 2019, I wound up, bringing together all these magical people, and I opened an art gallery and intuitive lounge so we can all learn and grow and expand together and assist others in doing the same. And then that began to expand. And then I started writing books. And then I teamed up with a dear friend of mine, she's like a sister to me, from college. And we began a business together. We created a business together, Uniquely Phenom collaboration, created a publishing company to assist us in creating these books. Oh my God, we co-host a podcast together, Going Commando with Angela and Dana. Oh my God, so much. So with the art, I created merchandise with my art so much. I said yes to this part of me that had lain dormant, and everything just exploded. And I learned so much in the process. I learned that everything is always working out for me. I learned that when you do what you love, the universe has a way of supporting you in the process. I learned that you're going to outgrow old relationships, old identities. And when you release those attachments, beautiful things come your way. I learned so much in the process. It was just truly an amazing, continues to be an amazing experience. I'm sitting here talking to you right now. It's awesome. It's awesome. So we're going to talk more about that, more about my experiences, more about what that looked like. We're going to talk about topics like, oh my God, restructuring your beliefs so you can create your exterior world to reflect your interior world. We're going to talk about your internal navigation system that helps you discern the direction to go. And notice I did two directions, but you catch my drift. We're going to talk about ancient practices and how we could bring them into modern times so they're appropriate for us. We're going to talk about manifestation and alignment and oneness and resonance and dissonance and divine timing and mirroring and, oh my God, our spiritual gifts and how to identify what they are in us and how to expand them, rituals and practices, the pitfalls, the perks. We're going to talk about all of it. But today we're going to begin about talking about the nature of our reality and where it all begins. So with that said, I had mentioned that as I expanded, I had taken my creativity and I had written some books. Shameless plug. I had written some books. I had created some decks of cards, and I had, created merchandise and stuff like that. But one of the things that I created with my dear friend Anne Marie Scorti was this beautiful deck of cards, adorned with my artwork, and her beautifully inspiring and empowering channeled messages. So I picked a card for today. And if time permits, I'm going to be picking cards throughout other episodes because these messages are so profound. So this card, the painting, is called Ede, because she's all eh. And the message is called The Nature of Your Reality. All is created from thoughts you project, which are based on your beliefs. And these beliefs dictate the nature of your reality. Discover what you believe, and you will understand your life up until this point. It is then for you to recognize the beliefs that are not in line with who you are. Who you are just means the essence of your being and the aspects of yourself which are the real you, not the you that you believe yourself to be. If you truly desire to be the master of your life, and indeed you are, whether you are aware of this or not, you will be so on a conscious level once you comprehend your beliefs and restructure and rebuild the foundation of this system with the intentional understanding based on truth. This card is so appropriate for our first episode of Decoding the Woo Woo, because when we understand the nature of our reality, when we begin to understand that everything in our external world is a reflection of our internal world, which is our beliefs about ourselves, our beliefs about the world around us, then we can then navigate our external world through being very mindful of our beliefs and restructuring the beliefs that no longer serve us. So I want you to think about, grab a piece of paper and a pen. You're talking to a school teacher here, or listening to a school teacher here. And I want you to write a couple things down for me. I'm going to dictate what I want you to write down, and then I'm going to talk about what that means. I want you to ask yourself this question. What is one belief I have about myself? And again, I will explain further, but write this down. Then I want you to ask yourself, when is the last time I questioned that belief? And if you haven't questioned that belief, now's a good time to do so. Then you want to ask yourself, is this belief rational? Is it based in logic? Is it supported by evidence? If not, you want to find the root to that belief. Like where did it originate? And then you want to restructure it with your adult, functional, rational mind, and then apply that belief to your life. Now, it's very clinical, but let's talk about this for a second. So I'll give you an example of when I was a child. I had a brother that he was the firstborn of Italian family. So firstborn Italian family, and I was the secondborn daughter. So there was a doting on him, and there was a reverence towards him that there wasn't for me. Now, I'm not crying in my beer over this. This is how the child perceived this. I also was a little bit more of a loud, aggressive, I don't know if you picked up on that yet, but a loud, aggressive child. So I was more annoying. I had a mother she had her own damage, God bless her, but she had her own damage. So she was more distant and a little cold, but yet she doted on my brother. My father had not yet learned how to regulate his emotions. So he was angry and volatile, and he came with his own baggage, right? As kids, we don't realize that these are human beings. Like as an adult, I'm like, oh yeah, my father was, screwed up because, and my mother was screwed up because, or whatever. But as a kid, you're like, yeah, my mother doesn't love me, my father's a jerk store, or whatever it is. So I have a distant mother who doted on my brother. I have a father who's volatile and aggressive, and I am stirring the pot unintentionally because the only way I know how to get my needs met is to make a lot of noise, which was not, my noise was not received well. So there was a lot of dysfunction in my home. But what was the message that I was getting as a child. Well, my needs don't matter. Um, my brother is loved best. Um, I'm not worthy of love and affection. Um, I have to make a lot of noise to get attention. Even if it's a negative attention, it's still attention and I'm getting it. So these are beliefs that I carried about myself and about my environment as a child. As I develop, and we're going to talk more about this, I think in like episode 3 or 4, when I talk about the practicality of the chakras, but I now carry these beliefs. So I go into my young adult life, I'm not worthy. Okay, so I attract relationships that reflect my lack of worthiness. I have to work harder to be loved because I'm not worthy of it. So now I'm overcompensating in my relationships, and I'm always feeling like I'm getting the short end of the stick or put upon or something like that. So you know what? I'm going to read something to you. 10 Recommandments for Personal Power, Empowerment. Buy yours now. I know what page it's on, so I'm going to make it a little easy for you. I'm curious if you can relate to this. Okay, so what I do is I mention a childhood belief that I had and 10 patterns that I developed in my life as a result of this belief. Okay, the childhood belief is my needs do not matter. Number 1, continued pattern of always putting other people's needs first. Think about that. Think about what our lives look like when we don't put our needs first, or at least get our needs met in some way. So, continued pattern of always putting other people's needs first. Continued pattern of always getting the short end of the stick, which leaves you in the victim mentality. Continued pattern of attracting takers, always feeling like my kindness was taken for granted. Can you relate at this point? Continued pattern of overcompensating for people when they are not meeting my needs. Continued pattern of disappointment and despair in inequitable relationships. Continued pattern of not properly setting boundaries for myself. Strike a nerve yet? Continued pattern of accepting less than I want or need in any given situation. Continued pattern of not feeling comfortable or worthy of communicating my needs. Continued pattern of settling for less than what I desire. Continued pattern of continuing relationships that no longer serve me, because even though I feel taken for granted and this makes me uncomfortable, it's a feeling I recognize, so I stay. So this is truly something to think about, how when we have one belief about ourselves that seems relatively innocuous, we don't even think about it. But when we look at that one belief and we recognize where it comes from, I recognize that I didn't feel like I mattered and all the reasons why. And I had to do all of the work of self-discovery, right? To really understand the what in my adult brain, not my 7-year-old Dana brain, my adult brain, of why I believe that about myself. And now removed, I could look at it and go, of course, my mother was distant. My father was volatile. My brother was favored. My brother was allowed to treat me in a certain way. When I expressed how I felt about it, nobody seemed to care how I felt. Why would I think I mattered? I had to work harder to be loved. So of course, every relationship I have is going to look like that. My mother was neglectful. My father was abusive. Every relationship I had up through, oh my God, till I was like 40 was either abusive or neglectful, abusive or neglectful. And what's really interesting is when I started looking at my patterns of self-protection or of being upset when somebody didn't meet my needs, I could have been characterized as abusive or neglectful. So we don't just experience this, we kind of become it sometimes if we're not paying attention. So it's really, really important that we look at our beliefs, sense whether or not they're rational or irrational. Now, I'm not saying that to the child they don't seem very, very real. But as an adult, when we look back and we have behaviors and patterns, and we see the patterns in relationships all through my 30s. Every boyfriend, I couldn't keep a boyfriend for more than like 6 months. So every boyfriend I had was just the same pattern, actually getting a little bit worse every time, but the same pattern, different face, different name, same pattern, until I reconciled my imbalances. So I refer, or I call this show Decoding the Woo Woo, and I will be talking about the heady esoteric stuff, but it starts right here with you. One other point that I want to make before we call it a day is a lot of us, when we think of God, call it what you want, God, source, universe, Hashem, Allah, whatever you want to call it. When we think of God, we often think of something that's outside of us. And I just want to remind everybody, and I say remind because you know this. Sometimes these beliefs, these knowings get lost in the muck, of the trauma and the drama of our lives. But we all are an extension of this creative force, regardless of what you want to call it. So if this all-knowing, all-loving, powerful force is something that we revere, and we are an extension of that, then where does the reverence go? We should have reverence for ourselves, worthiness, self-respect, all of it. And that comes with doing the work, restructuring our beliefs about ourselves, reworking our patterns, or allowing more healthy patterns as a result of it, and moving forward. This creative force that we are an extension of, just to give you a little analogy, give you a visual. I like to think of it like, I'm left-handed, so we're going to use this hand. I like to think of it like a surgical glove, right? So you have a surgical glove, and I'm going to blow air into it, and all the fingers stand up on the surgical glove. The source of the energy, the source of the power is here, right? And all of the fingers stand up because they're all an extension of this source. But what happens is when we get beat up by life a little bit, we come out of the womb all connected, right? Connected to this energetic source. And then mommy didn't love me, so I get a kink in the energy flow. Daddy was abusive, get a kink in the energy flow. My brother was a jerkster, kink in the energy flow. I didn't feel worthy, kink in the energy flow. I don't realize that these are imbalances, so I don't reconcile these imbalances. So I go through life and the kinks get worse and worse and worse. Now I'm flashing gang signs at you, but the kinks get worse and worse and worse, right? So we go through life disconnected from this energy source. This energy source isn't mystical and magical and cryptic and outside of you. This energy source is you. So how do we connect with this energy source? We fix the kinks, right? We straighten out the kinks. We go back. We find the source of the problems. That's why I want you to do your homework about the beliefs. And we'll talk more about this in future episodes, more in detail. But you go back and you reconcile these beliefs. Of course, it wasn't that I wasn't worthy. Of course, it wasn't that I didn't matter. It was that I had a father that was dysfunctional for whatever his reasons were. He was in an unhappy marriage. My mother was distant because her mother comes from a long line of abuse and neglect. My brother was favored because that's the nature of the culture and that's how it was. It had nothing to do with me, but I was collateral damage. So let's fix that kink. And then when the energy is free flowing, that's when the magic happens. Period. But that's when the magic happens. So we want to experience the magic spirituality. Unfortunately, fortunately, however you want to look at it, we have to work through the gunk. We have to work through the muck. And when we do that, the rewards are so great. I tell this beautiful story about, I picked up a paintbrush and, I moved out into the woods and I became this artist and this author and this creative and life is beautiful. But I didn't talk about what came before that. The estrangement from my mother, the falling out with my brother, the difficult time I had with my girl's birth father, all of the crappy relationships I had that I had to learn something from, the job that I left in not a proud way, all of the boundary setting that I had to do, and the the building of my own worthiness and the putting myself back together, essentially, and undoing those kinks. This is the work. This is the magic. And in Decoding the Woo Woo, hopefully we could walk there together. So I want to thank you. I want to thank you for indulging me. I want to thank you for being here. And if you would like to know more about who I am and what I do individual intuitive guidance. Again, do another podcast, write books, do all these things, run a business. You can go to ubuntufishgallery.com. And at Ubuntu Fish Gallery, anything you want to know about Dana Sardano is there. Also, you know what? I'll save it for later. Again, thank you for listening. Thank you for indulging me. And do your homework and Ubuntu.